Hey, what's up? I'm D.A. Horton.
And I'm Alicia Horton.
And we have been married for almost 16 years now.
Absolutely. And currently we are located in Long Beach, California, where we are church planting. But most importantly, we have 3 beautiful babies.
They're not babies anymore.
I know, they're not babies anymore.
14-year-old in high school, 10-year-old daughter, and a 5-year-old son.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we love doing is just being real with couples, opening our hearts and just allowing you to be invited into our struggles, our tension, the things we got right, the things we got wrong, and just being able to highlight all the more why God is so good to us in this process.
And it's been a blessing to walk with Jesus before we were even married, because what we love to see is the way that he works on our lives, and hopefully that'll bring hope and encouragement and guidance and clarity in the tensions that you're holding as being followers of Christ, but living in a broken world with 2 broken people that are fighting to stay together. All right, in this course, we want to really kind of deal with some practical realities around the topic of conflict resolution. Now, this one is tough because it's going to challenge us in good ways, that we need to really kind of focus on how do we resolve conflict. As Alicia and I have worked through this a lot, we're going to be honest with y'all with the fact that we had 2 different understandings of how to deal with conflict. So the first thing I want to be honest with you about is the fact that we're not talking about conflict management. It's not about how do you manage conflict. Right. Nah, it's about how do you resolve it? Right. How do we look at issues and then how can we process through them together? Yeah. And then how can our marriage and our household rhythms and even our connections in the local church benefit with flourishing as we learn how to biblically resolve the conflict that is between us?
And before we kind of delve into the main topic at hand, there are 2 ways to handle conflict. There's either fight or flight. And for both of us, we were on polar opposites as well. Yeah. You know, I was one, I think you heard it in some of the previous sessions, I'm the pistol. I kind of come off and I just tell you how it is, right?
Yeah.
But, and him on the other hand, he kind of ran away from it. And I'm just like, oh no, you got to come back here and we got to work through this. And so you bring those dynamics into conflict resolution and you're going to have a lot of sparks and fireworks go off until you can kind of not manage, but necessarily resolve these issues at hand. And then one of the things that we realized was causing a lot of problems in our marriage was our past and how we were not dealing with it. And we were kind of just, again, sweeping it under the rug per se.
Yeah. And so I want to really open up by telling them our story and one of the most embarrassing moments in our time together. Okay. So let me set the scene. All right. This was back in an era when we were both doing gospel rap, Christians who rap, whatever you want to call it. We were doing that. We were engaged in that line of ministry. We were engaged actually to each other. She had the engagement ring. We set the wedding date. It was April and we were just a few months away from approaching June. And in this particular evening, I was doing an event at a local Christian club. I know that sounds taboo for some of y'all, but basically it was just a gathering spot for Christians, no alcohol, nothing like that. And we could allow our gifts and talents be used for the glory of God. And so I was at the event that evening. I was able to perform 3 or 4 songs. We had a big fight prior to that. And this is when text messaging first came out. Mm-hmm. So our fight went from phone calls to hanging up to text messages and threats and all of that. And then I'm on stage giving the gospel through lyrics and beats and rhymes. And I step off the stage and Alicia just walked in. And my heart is settled that she accepted the invitation to come to the engagement that evening. So I walk up to her and almost like Dumb and Dumber, how about a hug? And she just like walks right past me. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I see how this is going to go down. So then I start to pursue her and talk with her. And I'm like, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming. And she just gave me this stone cold dead look. And I was like, so you ain't going to express anything back to me? And then she does it. She hands me her engagement ring and she's like, I'm done. And then she walks out and I'm like, are you serious? So then to bore you all the details, here's what we did. We ended up fussing and fighting from about 10 o'clock that night until 4 o'clock the next morning. Mm-hmm. And when I say fight, I'm going to be honest. Now I'm a youth pastor at this point. We are standing there at the intersection of the street where the church was that I was serving at the youth pastor, and we're cussing each other out. We're calling each other every other name except for the name that our parents gave us. We were fighting so bad that the drug dealers had to move their business 2 blocks away because we was out here acting crazy.
Right.
There was a house party going on and they stopped the music. The DJ pressed stop. They all had their little red cups and we were the entertainment for that party. And here we are, indwelt by the Holy Spirit, believers who love Jesus, and we are going in on each other with this unresolved issues that kept piling and piling and piling on top of us. Now, we sit back and we look and say, man, how far has God brought us in these 15 plus years from that moment and that evening? And what would you tell the people today who are watching to say, we look like we have it all together. We're here telling them about conflict resolution, but they are now just getting introduced to the level of depth of poor conflict resolution, poor ways to approach conflict with each other. And how would you say that the Lord has worked into our hearts stronger ways and rhythms that are more in tune with God's word to deal with conflict?
We really had to just be honest with one another and allow each other to, like we talked about earlier, is to have the space to express our frustrations. But at the same time, we didn't realize the layers and layers and layers of baggage that we literally brought into the relationship. And so we really start having to identify those problem areas that we needed God to help us in, and one of them was our communication. One of them was also the way we, like I said, managed finances. And another way was how we dealt with resolving conflict. And like I said, we really struggle with how to find a balance in communicating our feelings and emotions, giving each other that space and not tripping over the body language, the tone we were communicating in, and really kind of sifting through that and seeing the heart of what this person was trying to communicate to us.
Yeah, because it was hard. I mean, Alicia would communicate to me and she would say something with an attitude. She's snapping her neck and sucking her teeth and snapping her fingers. And I'm like, man, who do you think you're talking to? And that's how I would initially come right back. And so this respect and this reverence that I had for her as my fiance, but even early on in our marriage, it all went out the door and I'm back on the street. Like I'm talking to another dude that I'm about to start boxing on the street. And I'm like, dude, who you coming to me like that with? And boom, I go right into that fleshly carnality response and not even understanding of the fact that now we're not even dealing with the real issue. We're dealing with rabbit trails. We're dealing with your tone. We're dealing with my way that I'm expressing my frustration. And the whole issue that started this doesn't even get dealt with. And so when we kept sweeping stuff under the carpet and not dealing with it, it actually allowed us to keep coming back and tripping over the unresolved issues. And it was just mound after mound after mound after mound. And it took a long time for us to really say, okay, the only way we're going to do this, we got to take the carpet and throw it out. We got to get the dustpan and we got to start sweeping all this stuff out and dealing with it.
But we don't want you to feel overwhelmed because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I have so many issues. It's going to take one step at a time. It's going to take you identifying one area that you said, hey, this is what we really need to work on first. And then going down the line and not avoiding the other issues that you know are problematic in your marriage, but saying, hey, we're going to deal with this, but let's kind of resolve this first. So we've come up with some tools that are very helpful for us that we have used over the years. And again, we're not perfect. We're imperfect people, but we realize that we can't keep approaching conflict this way. So what we have done was come up with these tools again and want you to be able to look at them, see how you can even adapt them and modify them to what works best for you. But we just want to give you something to be able to have a practical way to work through resolving conflict in a God-glorifying way. In a biblical way.
Yeah. And so the way we want to close out this time is to basically put you in the tension of discussion. What are those issues? What are the things that you're sweeping under the carpet? What are the things that you have in the baggage of your past life before marriage that you brought into the marriage that you just really need to unpack and put it all on the table as husband and wife to say, okay, when I said I do, these are the things that I said I do too. And how can we process all the dirty laundry, get it washed? And how can we recognize that we can clean out all these things from what's been hiding under the carpet purposefully that keeps us tripping over these things that we have not resolved? So what are those things? Identifying them is crucial. And so as you process through that, continue to love each other, give space and grace, and we're going to give you some great tools to massage out these conversations as we continue through this course.